The Georgia Senate race plays an important role in the 2026 midterm, specifically for Democrats, who look to gain control of the United States Senate in 2026 and already have a Senator, Jon Ossoff, from the state who's seeking re-election. This race is a really important one for Democrats at that. Jon Ossoff has ran for a full term in 2020 against David Perdue, where in the runoff election, he ultimately ended up winning that race. But it just goes to show, if we go back to 2020 and 2021, Jon Ossoff in his first round was behind David Perdue, and David Perdue was simply only 0.27% away from getting to that 50% threshold that he would have needed to have been the next senator of Georgia on that first round. Ultimately, that failed. Jon Ossoff ended up winning in that second round, winning by over a percentage point in the state of Georgia. Now, 2026 is going to be significantly different. The first major difference is the fact that in 2020, the state went to Joe Biden. In 2024, the state went to Donald Trump, and Jon Ossoff has remained popular, or at least somewhat popular, throughout the state of Georgia through his tenure as a senator. With that noted, Jon Ossoff is seeking re-election, and he's likely to face Republican Mike Collins for the seat. Of course, this is from Polymarket, but we can dive deeper into polling that's been conducted on this race as well. But people are even betting on Mike Collins to be the next Republican nominee for the Senate seat in Georgia. 74% of people believe right now that he is going to be that Republican nominee, and I would say that that's pretty likely. He was at a campaign stop with Donald Trump I don't know, maybe over a week ago. I can't remember correctly for certain, but he's a very different type of candidate than what we've seen run in this race, and not this race, but in the 2022 Senate race in the state of Georgia. Very different from someone like Herschel Walker. And the candidate that Brian Kemp has chose to endorse for this race is Derek Dooley, who is the second place finisher at 16%. Of course, this is all according to Polymarket, but if we dive deeper into the Republican primary here, we can see that Mike Collins is ahead. Of course, there is a rule in Georgia where if you don't get 50%, you have to go into a runoff. I believe that's for primaries as well. Someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. But as of this point, Mike Collins and Buddy Carter are set to go into a runoff race, but more people are betting on Mike Collins ending up winning that Republican nomination in the state of Georgia. Now, this is interesting because if we look back, if we look back at 2020, Jon Ossoff won the state by 1.2%. That was against incumbent Senator David Perdue. So Jon Ossoff had a tough match there in 2020 and 2021 to win that. Raphael Warnock won the Georgia special election by 2.1% against incumbent Kelly Loeffler, who had been appointed to the seat. So a little bit of a difference there as well between the margins of Ossoff and Warnock. My apologies. I'm sure Warnock will be out on the trail with Ossoff, etc. And if we go to 2022, Warnock won the state by 2.8%. So just goes to show again the importance of this race and how much this is really going to impact Georgia politics in the future. So 2020, of course, Ossoff wins by 1.2%. We'll go into 2026, where voters are betting that Jon Ossoff is going to win re-election to this seat. The Georgia Senate election winner, 81% of people are betting on Jon Ossoff being that candidate to go on and win the general election here in Georgia. And if you've watched my election prediction map video where I talk about all the races, you'll see that I agree with this 100%. In fact, I think that Jon Ossoff is likely to win by a pretty significant margin here in Georgia. Of course, nothing crazy, nothing over 5%, but anywhere from 1 to 5% I fully expect, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wins without going into a runoff race. Of course, we'll have to wait and see how things shape out. But that's my current prediction for this race as we stand. But again, if we go back and we look, we see that Mike Collins and Buddy Carter expected to go into what would be a runoff election in the state of Georgia, and ultimately, a lot of people are betting on Mike Collins pulling that through and winning that Republican primary in the state of Georgia. Now, he's had some hiccups along the way, including when he was at his rally with Donald Trump just a few days ago, a week ago, whenever that was. His wording on things was significantly interesting and nonetheless important to note. So you can see, if you go into the candidates for this race, Brian Kemp shockingly decided to not run for this race. He's term limited as the governor of Georgia, and he was already endorsed by people like Tim Scott from South Carolina, who believed that this was a good opportunity for Republicans to pick up this seat had Brian Kemp ran. And I would agree that if Brian Kemp had ran for this race, Democrats' chances of gaining the Senate majority would have got significantly harder just by that development alone, in a race that would have just shocked everyone, really. I think that the race would have been incredibly close, but I think Brian Kemp might have actually been able to pull it off. But he decided to not run, instead endorsing Derek Dooley, who's likely not going to be that Republican nominee. So we'll have to wait and see, which is also interesting because Mike Collins originally endorsed Brian Kemp to run for this race in 2026, and then Brian Kemp ultimately decided to decline, and Mike Collins entered the race and withdrew his endorsement from Brian Kemp, who I believe at that point had already said he wasn't going to run. But Brian Kemp didn't endorse him. He endorsed Derek Dooley for the race. So that's also significantly interesting to me as well. So with all of that said, what do you guys think is going to happen in this race? Personally, I believe that Jon Ossoff has the upper hand. I believe, like I said before, that if this race was between someone like Brian Kemp, this race would be significantly different. But because it's likely going to be between someone like Mike Collins, I think the race is significantly different in the regard that Jon Ossoff has a significantly better chance at winning this election. If we even go into general election polling, that also seems to stay the same. While not getting over 50% in any of the polls, Jon Ossoff has led in every single one. Of course, these conducted last year in September, July, June, etc. But the issue at hand really is the fact of how Donald Trump is viewed across the country. And he's not viewed in a positive light. And I think that these numbers are honestly just going to continue to get bigger for Jon Ossoff. These numbers are going to continue in his favor if the trajectory of the country continues in the way that I expect it to, in the way that it has for the past few months. So, of course, real clear politics from those averages from May to September 12th, Ossoff 3.6% up. January to September for a race to the White House, Ossoff 3.7% up. So on average, somewhere in that 3.5 margin range is where we're sitting at for Jon Ossoff to win this race. Of course, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that this race has a chance of going to the Republicans, or do you believe that Jon Ossoff pulls this off like he did in 2020? Of course, let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, I love reading through those and seeing the differences in opinion and what makes you guys think the way you do. Personally, I believe Jon Ossoff has the upper edge in this race. I believe he's probably going to come out with a victory of anywhere from 1 to 5 points. And that wouldn't really shock me if I'm being completely honest. So, of course, again, let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe as always. Don't forget to turn on those post notifications, the bell icon at the bottom of the screen after you subscribe, to ensure that you're notified every time that I upload a new video. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.